First contact. The vast expanse of space had never seemed so small to Ambassador Zixnera. As she stood before the Galactic Council, her tentacles quivering with anticipation, she couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. Today was the day that would change the course of galactic history forever. Esteemed members of the Council, Zixnera began, her voice echoing through the Grand Chamber. I come before you with news that will shake the very foundations of our understanding of the universe. We are no longer alone. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. Representatives from 1,000 worlds leaned forward in their seats, their array of eyes, sensors, and other sensory organs fixed intently on the ambassador. In the outer spiral arm of the galaxy, on a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, we have discovered a species unlike any we have encountered before. They call themselves humans. Murmurs of curiosity and skepticism filled the air. The Galactic Council had seen countless species rise and fall over the millennia, but something in Zixnera's tone suggested that this was different. What makes these humans so special? Asked Grolfak, the imposing representative of the warrior Krix Exa race. His scales glinted in the soft light of the chamber as he leaned forward, a hint of disdain in his voice. Zixnera's skin shifted to a deep blue, a sign of intense emotion among her species. They are a paradox, council members. Physically, they are unremarkable. No natural armor, no claws, no venom. They are not particularly strong, fast, or durable compared to many species we know. And yet, she paused, allowing the tension to build. And yet, they have achieved spaceflight in a mere few thousand years since developing rudimentary technology. They have survived multiple near-extinction events, including several of their own making. They have mastered their planet's biosphere, for better or worse, and now stand on the brink of becoming an interstellar species. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices and sounds. Some expressed disbelief, others excitement, and a few voiced concern. Amidst the chaos, the ancient Quarian diplomat Elmthor raised a gnarled appendage, silencing the room. Ambassador Zixnera. Elmthor's voice crackled with age and wisdom. You speak of their achievements, but what of their nature? What drives these humans? Zixnera's skin rippled with patterns of uncertainty. That, respected Elmthor, is perhaps the most fascinating and terrifying aspect of humanity. They are driven by everything. Curiosity, greed, love, hatred, ambition, compassion. They contain multitudes, often contradictory, and always in flux. She activated a holographic display, showing images of human history. Great monuments of stone and steel rose from nothing. Vast cities sprawled across continents. Wars raged and peace blossomed in equal measure. They create art that can move one to tears, and weapons that can annihilate worlds. They wage war over the pettiest differences, yet unite in the face of common threats. They destroy their environment in the name of progress, then fight tooth and nail to preserve what remains. The council watched in stunned silence as the parade of human achievements and atrocities played out before them. Scenes of heartwarming kindness were juxtaposed with acts of unthinkable cruelty. But perhaps most importantly, Zixnera continued, her voice growing more intense. They never, ever give up. Failure is not an end for humans, but a challenge. Impossibility is not a barrier, but an invitation. They have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When faced with problems that would cause other species to accept their fate, humans innovate, adapt, and overcome. Grolfak snorted derisively. They sound unstable and dangerous. Perhaps it would be best to contain them before they become a threat to galactic peace. Zixnera's skin flushed a deep red. With all due respect, honored Grolfak, that would be the gravest mistake we could make. Humanity thrives on adversity. To try and contain them would only drive them to break free, potentially seeing us as enemies in the process. She turned to address the entire council once more. We stand at a crossroads. Esteemed members, We can choose to fear humanity, to try and control or suppress them, or we can choose to welcome them, to learn from them, and to grow alongside them. The chamber fell into contemplative silence. The weight of the decision before them was palpable. After what seemed like an eternity, Elmthor spoke again. "You have given us much to consider, Ambassador Zixnera, but I have one final question. Given all you have told us about these humans, what do you believe their reaction will be when they learn they are not alone in the universe?" Zixnera's skin shifted through a kaleidoscope of colors before settling on a bright, pulsing gold. That, honored Elmthor, is perhaps the most exciting prospect of all. Based on our observations, I believe their reaction will be a mixture of fear, wonder, excitement, and an insatiable curiosity. She smiled, an expression she had learned from studying humans. They will ask questions we have never thought to ask. They will challenge our assumptions and push our boundaries. They will infuriate us, inspire us, and ultimately, I believe, they will change us all for the better. As the council began to debate in earnest, Zixnera stepped back from the podium. She knew that whatever the outcome, the galaxy would never be the same. The age of humanity had begun, and for better or worse, the universe would have to adapt to their unrelenting, insane, beautiful presence. Little did the Galactic Council know. At that very moment, on a blue planet millions of light years away, a young human scientist named Dr. Elena Rodriguez was peering through a telescope, her eyes widening in disbelief as she spotted something that shouldn't be there. A glint of metal where no metal should be, orbiting a distant star. The first hints of alien life were about to rock humanity to its core, setting in motion a chain of events that would reshape the galaxy forever. The Galactic Challenge. 50 years had passed since humanity's tumultuous entry into the galactic community. The initial shock and awe had given way to a wary acceptance as species across the cosmos learned to coexist with these unpredictable newcomers. Humans, true to form, had thrown themselves into interstellar politics, trade, and cultural exchange with characteristic enthusiasm and occasional recklessness. But now, as representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the grand amphitheater of unity on the neutral world of Harmonix, a palpable sense of dread hung in the air. The Galactic Council had called this emergency session to address a crisis that threatened not just individual worlds, but the very fabric of space-time itself. High Counselor Elmthor, his once gnarled appendages now replaced with sleek biomechanical prosthetics, raised his arms for silence. The cacophony of 1,000 different species quieted to a low hum. Esteemed colleagues, Elmthor's voice rang out, amplified by the chamber's acoustics. We face a threat unlike any in our collective memory. The void cascades, once thought to be mere scientific curiosities, have begun to expand at an alarming rate. A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the amphitheater, showing a region of space where reality itself seemed to be unraveling. Tendrils of nothingness reached out, consuming stars and planets in their wake. Our best scientists estimate that if left unchecked, these void cascades will consume our entire galaxy within 3 standard decades. Elmthor continued, his voice grave. We have exhausted all conventional methods of containment and reversal. We stand at the precipice of annihilation. The amphitheater erupted into chaos. Voices cried out in 100 languages, some calling for immediate evacuation to other galaxies, others demanding more resources for research, and still others simply wailing in despair. Amidst the pandemonium, a single figure stood up from the human delegation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now in her 70s, but with eyes still bright with the fire of discovery, made her way to the central podium. As she walked, a hush fell over the crowd. The humans had earned a reputation for unconventional solutions, and all eyes turned to her with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Members of the Galactic Council, Belina began, her voice steady despite the weight of trillions of lives on her shoulders. Humanity has faced extinction many times in our brief history. Each time, we have survived not through brute force or advanced technology, but through creativity, collaboration, and a stubborn refusal to accept defeat. She gestured to the hologram of the void cascades. What we see here is not just destruction, but an opportunity. These cascades are not simply erasing reality. They are rewriting the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. If we can understand and harness this process, we might not only stop the cascades but usher in a new era of scientific understanding. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Grolfak, the Krixexi warrior who had long been skeptical of humanity, growled from his seat. "And how do you propose we do that, human? Our greatest minds have failed to even slow the cascade's growth." Elena smiled, a glint of mischief in her eyes. "By doing what humans do best, taking a calculated risk, we propose sending manned expeditions into the fringes of the void cascades." The amphitheater erupted once more, this time in shock and outrage. "Madness!" cried out multiple voices. "A suicide mission!" shouted others. Elena raised her hands, calling for calm. "Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, it's never been done before. But consider this. Our remote probes and instruments can't survive within the cascades long enough to gather meaningful data. But a manned mission, with human adaptability and on-the-spot decision-making, might just succeed where machines have failed." She turned to address the entire assembly. "We're not asking anyone else to take this risk. Humanity volunteers to lead these expeditions. All we ask is for the combined scientific knowledge and resources of the galaxy to support us." Elmthor leaned forward, his ancient eyes fixed on Elena. "And what of the ethical considerations, Dr. Rodriguez? You're proposing to send sentient beings to what could very well be their deaths." Elena nodded solemnly. "We understand the risks, High Counselor. But every volunteer for this mission knows what's at stake. We're not just fighting for our own survival, but for every species in this room and beyond. If there's even a chance that we can save trillions of lives by risking a few, isn't that a chance worth taking?" The amphitheater fell into a contemplative silence. Species that had evolved over millions of years to prioritize safety and certainty found themselves grappling with the human concept of necessary sacrifice. Zixnera, now a senior diplomat, spoke up from her seat. "I've worked with humans for half a century now, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Never bet against them when the odds are impossible. They thrive on it." Slowly, tentatively, voices of support began to rise. Species pledged resources, scientists volunteered to work on the project, and even some non-humans stepped forward to join the expedition teams. As the session adjourned, with plans being laid for the most ambitious and desperate project in galactic history, Elena found herself cornered by Grolfak. "I hope you know what you're doing, human," the Krixexi rumbled. "The fate of every living being now rests on your species' insane gambit." Elena met his gaze unflinchingly. "That's the thing about humanity, Grolfak. Our greatest achievements have always come when we had no choice but to succeed. We're at our best when we're dancing on the edge of the abyss." As she walked away, Grolfak couldn't help but feel a mix of admiration and fear. The humans were indeed insane, but perhaps that insanity was exactly what the galaxy needed to survive. In the days that followed, as news of the Void Diver project spread across the cosmos, a wave of both hope and apprehension swept through countless worlds. Humanity had thrown its lot in with the galaxy, and now the galaxy watched with bated breath as the creatures from that small blue planet prepared to either save them all or go down in a blaze of gloriously insane courage. Little did they know, the true test of humanity's resolve, and the galaxy's faith in them, was yet to come. Defying expectations, the launch of the first Void Diver expedition was a spectacle unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds watched via holographic broadcasts as the sleek, iridescent ship, christened the Audacity, prepared to embark on its perilous journey. Captain Zora Chen stood on the bridge, her dark eyes scanning the faces of her diverse crew. Humans made up the majority, but there were also volunteers from a dozen other species, each bringing unique skills and perspectives to the mission. "Final systems check," Zora called out. her voice steady despite the weight of trillions of lives resting on their shoulders. As her crew responded with a chorus of affirmatives, Zora couldn't help but reflect on the whirlwind of the past 6 months. The combined scientific minds of the galaxy had worked tirelessly to create a ship theoretically capable of withstanding the reality-warping effects of the void cascades. Now, it was time to put theory into practice. Audacity to Galactic Control, Zara spoke into the comm. We are go for launch. A moment of silence, then the voice of High Counselor Elm Thor filled the bridge. Godspeed, Audacity. The hopes of the galaxy go with you. With a surge of energy that sent ripples through the fabric of space-time itself, the Audacity leaped forward, streaking towards the ominous, shimmering boundary of the nearest void cascade. As they approached, the ship's sensors began to go haywire. Reality itself seemed to twist and warp around them. Several crew members clutched their stations, fighting waves of nausea as their bodies struggled to cope with the impossible physics surrounding them. Steady as she goes, Zora commanded, her knuckles white as she gripped her chair. Remember your training. Adapt. Overcome. With a flash of light and a sensation that felt like being turned inside out, the Audacity plunged into the void cascade. For a moment, there was nothing. No light, no sound, no sensation. Then, with a rush, awareness returned. The bridge was bathed in an eerie, shifting light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Status report. Zora barked. Hull integrity at 82% and holding, came the response from Jax, the Fraxian engineer. Shields are fluctuating, but operational. Sensors are giving impossible readings, added Lyra, the Zoxian science officer, her tentacles waving in agitation. According to this, we're simultaneously in 1,000 different locations across the galaxy. Zara nodded grimly. All right, people. This is what we signed up for. Let's start gathering data. Over the next several hours, the crew of the Audacity worked feverishly to collect and analyze information about their mind-bending surroundings. They witnessed stars being born and dying in the span of seconds, saw entire civilizations rise and fall in the blink of an eye, and recorded energy readings that defied the known laws of physics. But as they delved deeper into the cascade, things began to go wrong. Equipment failures cascaded through the ship. Crew members reported hallucinations and time dilation effects. And most alarmingly, the Audacity's power reserves began to drain at an alarming rate. Captain, Jax called out, his voice trained. We've got maybe 20 minutes before total power failure. We need to abort the mission and get out of here. Zara gritted her teeth. They had gathered a wealth of data, but she knew it wasn't enough. They needed to push further to find the key to stopping the cascade's expansion, but at what cost? As she wrestled with the decision, alarms blared across the bridge. A massive surge of energy was heading straight for them, threatening to tear the Audacity apart. Evasive maneuvers, Zara shouted, but it was too late. The energy wave struck, and the world dissolved into chaos. When Zara regained consciousness, she found herself floating in a void. The Audacity was gone, her crew nowhere to be seen. Panic began to set in, but then she noticed something strange. In the distance, pinpricks of light danced and swirled, forming patterns that seemed almost deliberate. With no other options, Zora concentrated on the lights, willing herself to move towards them. As she drew closer, the patterns resolved into complex, multidimensional equations that hurt her brain to look at directly. Suddenly, understanding flooded her mind. These weren't just equations, they were the fundamental code of reality itself. And there, hidden within the swirling patterns, she saw the flaw that was causing the void cascades to expand. Before she could process this revelation, a blinding light engulfed her, and Zara found herself back on the bridge of the Audacity. Her crew was staring at her in shock. Captain. Lyra ventured cautiously. You disappeared for almost an hour. We thought we'd lost you. Zara blinked, her mind reeling. An hour. It felt like mere seconds. She shook her head, focusing on the task at hand. Never mind that now. I know what's causing the cascades, and I think I know how to stop them. But we need to get this information back to Galactic Control immediately. As the Audacity limped out of the void cascade, its hull scorched and systems barely functioning, news of their return spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Against all odds, the humans and their allies had not only survived their insane gambit, but had returned with the key to saving the galaxy. In the days that followed, as scientists pored over the Audacity's data and Zora's impossible equations, a new sense of hope began to spread. The humans had proven once again that their unique blend of adaptability, creativity, and sheer determination could overcome even the most cosmic of challenges. But even as celebrations began on countless worlds, a new crisis was brewing. For in pushing the boundaries of known physics, humanity had inadvertently attracted the attention of something ancient and powerful, something that had been sleeping in the spaces between realities for eons. And it was beginning to stir. The turning point, the grand amphitheater of unity on Harmonix, was once again filled to capacity, but this time the atmosphere crackled with an electric mix of hope and apprehension. At the center of the stage stood Captain Zora Chen, looking simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated as she addressed the Galactic Council and, by extension, trillions of beings across the cosmos. And so, esteemed members of the Council, Zora concluded, her voice steady despite her fatigue, we believe that by using these equations to recalibrate our deflector arrays, we can create a cascading effect that will not only halt the expansion of the void cascades, but potentially reverse them entirely. A stunned silence fell over the amphitheater, broken only by the soft whir of countless data pads as scientists and leaders alike tried to process the implications of Zora's words. High Counselor Elm Thor was the first to speak. Captain Chen, what you're proposing is unprecedented. The scale of the operation, the energy requirements alone, would be astronomical. Zora finished for him. Yes, Counselor. We're talking about rewriting the laws of physics on a galactic scale. But it's our best shot, our only shot, at saving not just our galaxy, but potentially the entire universe. Grolthak, the Krixexy warrior who had long been skeptical of humanity, rumbled from his seat. And what of the risks, human? Meddling with the fabric of reality on this scale, we could end up causing more damage than the void cascades themselves. Zara met his gaze unflinchingly. The risks are significant, Grolthak, I won't deny that. But we've run countless simulations. We've consulted with the greatest scientific minds from 1,000 worlds, and every calculation points to the same conclusion. This will work. As debate erupted across the amphitheater, Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward to stand beside Zora. The elderly scientist's eyes gleamed with the same fire that had driven her to propose the Void Diver project in the first place. Members of the Council, Elena's voice cut through the clamor. I understand your concerns, but consider this. 6 months ago, we faced certain annihilation. Now, thanks to the bravery of Captain Chen and her crew, we have a fighting chance. Yes, it's risky. Yes, it's never been done before. But that's the story of every great advancement in history. We stand on the brink of not just saving ourselves, but of unlocking the deepest secrets of the universe. I ask you, how can we not take that chance? A murmur of agreement began to ripple through the crowd. Species that had evolved over millions of years to be cautious and conservative found themselves swayed by the humans' passionate argument. As the Council prepared to vote on the implementation of the Reality Rewrite Project, as it was now being called, alarms suddenly blared throughout the amphitheater. The holographic display at the center of the room flickered to life, showing a terrifying sight. A void cascade, larger than any seen before, had suddenly appeared at the edge of the Harmonix system. Panic erupted as the assembled delegates realized the direness of their situation. The void cascade was expanding at an exponential rate, threatening to engulf the planet within hours. Amidst the chaos, Zora's voice rang out. This is it. This is our chance to prove the theory works. We need to implement the reality rewrite now, using Harmonix's planetary defense grid as the focal point. Elmthor looked at her in shock. But the calculations aren't finished. The simulations. We don't have time for more simulations. Zora cut him off. It's now or never. For a moment, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Then, with a short nod, Elmthor gave the order. Do it. What followed was a frenzy of activity as scientists and engineers from 100 species worked in perfect harmony, their differences forgotten in the face of impending doom. The planetary defense grid of Harmonix was hastily reconfigured, drawing power from every available source. As the void cascade loomed ever closer, threatening to swallow the planet whole, Zara stood at the main control panel, her hand hovering over the activation switch. She took a deep breath, thought of her crew, of Earth, of all the beings counting on her, and pressed the button. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a sound that defied description, a wave of energy burst forth from Harmonix. It collided with the advancing void cascade in a spectacular display of light and power that was visible from half a galaxy away. The assembled beings watched in awe as reality itself seemed to ripple and shift. The void cascade wavered, its edges becoming indistinct. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed to expand even faster, and cries of despair arose from the crowd. But then, miraculously, the cascade began to shrink. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed, it collapsed in on itself. With a final flash of light, it winked out of existence entirely. A stunned silence fell over the amphitheater, broken only by the beeping of instruments confirming what their eyes could scarcely believe. The void cascade was gone. The reality rewrite had worked. As cheers erupted and celebrations began, Zara allowed herself a small smile of relief. But her moment of triumph was short-lived, for as she turned to face the jubilant crowd, she saw something that made her blood run cold. There, at the edge of the holographic display, almost lost in the chaos of the cascade's destruction, was a shape, vast, incomprehensible, and unmistakably alive. It was gone in an instant, but Zara knew with terrifying certainty that their victory had come at a price. In rewriting the laws of reality, they had awakened something ancient and powerful, something that had been sleeping in the spaces between dimensions for eons. As the galaxy celebrated its salvation, Zara Chen realized that humanity's greatest challenge was only just beginning. The true test of their ingenuity, their adaptability, and their sheer insane determination lay ahead, and the fate of not just their galaxy, but of all reality, would hang in the balance. A new era, the celebration that swept across the galaxy in the wake of the Void Cascade's defeat, was unlike anything seen in the history of sentient life. Species that had been bitter enemies for millennia embraced as brothers. Worlds that had never known peace experienced their first taste of universal harmony. For one shining moment, the entire galaxy was united in joy and relief. But for Captain Zora Chen and a select few others, the victory felt hollow. They alone knew the terrible price of their success. In a secluded chamber deep within the heart of Harmonix, Zara stood before a gathering of the galaxy's most influential leaders. High Counselor Elmthor, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Grolthak, and representatives from a dozen other species listened intently as she recounted what she had seen in the aftermath of the reality rewrite. "We've dubbed it the Entity," Zora explained, her voice grave. "We don't know what it is, where it came from, or what it wants. But we do know this: it's vast beyond comprehension, ancient beyond measure, and our actions have awakened it." Holograms flickered to life around the room, showing the fleeting glimpses of the entity that had been captured during the chaotic moments of the Void Cascade's collapse. Even these fragmentary images were enough to send shivers down the spines of those present. "By the Cosmic Forge," Grolthak rumbled, his usual bravado replaced by awe and fear. "What have we done?" Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward, her aged face set in determined lines. "What we had to do, Grolthak. We saved our galaxy, our people. Now we face a new challenge. Elmthor's biomechanical eyes wared as he processed the information. The question is, what do we do now? How do we prepare for a threat we can barely comprehend? All eyes turned to Zora. In the months since the Void Diver mission, she had become more than just a captain. She was a symbol of hope, of humanity's audacious spirit that had saved them all. Zara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of expectation on her shoulders. We do what humanity has always done when faced with the impossible. We adapt. We innovate. We reach out. She activated a holographic display, showing a new ship design. This is the Emissary. It's a vessel designed to traverse not just space, but the very boundaries of reality itself. Our plan is to make contact with the entity. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Grolthak was the first to find his voice. Contact. Are you insane, human? This being could swat our entire galaxy out of existence on a whim. Zara met his gaze steadily. Perhaps. But it hasn't. Not yet. That tells me it's either curious about us or unsure of us. Either way, communication is our best option. If it's hostile, we need to know. If it's not, we could be on the brink of the greatest discovery in the history of all sentient life. Elena nodded in agreement. The Emissary Project will combine the best of galactic science and engineering. But more than that, it will carry the hopes and dreams of every sentient being. This is our chance to show the entity who we truly are. As the leaders debated, a strange calm settled over Zora. She realized that this moment, this impossible, terrifying, exhilarating moment, was what humanity had been preparing for all along. Every hardship they'd faced, every challenge they'd overcome, had led to this. Elmthor's voice cut through her thoughts. It seems we have little choice. The Emissary Project has my support. But who will lead this mission? Who among us is brave enough, or perhaps insane enough, to face this entity? Without hesitation, Zara stepped forward. I will. The room fell silent. Then, to everyone's surprise, Grolthak stood. If we're truly embarking on this madness, then the Crixixes stand with humanity. I volunteered to join the emissary's crew. One by one, representatives from other species stepped forward, volunteering their best and brightest for the mission. In that moment, Zara saw the true power of humanity's impact on the galaxy. They had not just saved these beings, they had inspired them to reach for the impossible. As the meeting adjourned and plans for the Emissary Project were set in motion, Zara found herself standing alone, gazing out at the stars. Elena joined her, a knowing look in her aged eyes. Nervous? The scientist asked. Zara chuckled softly. Terrified. Excited. Everything in between. We're about to embark on a journey beyond anything we've ever imagined. We might find wonders beyond comprehension or horrors that defy sanity. We might not come back at all. Elena placed a comforting hand on Zora's shoulder. And yet you're going. That, Captain Chen, is why humanity has come so far. It's why the galaxy turned to us in its darkest hour. Not because we're the strongest or the smartest, but because we're willing to take that leap into the unknown. Zara nodded, feeling a swell of pride for her species and for all they had accomplished. We're insane, she said with a smile. Gloriously so, Elena agreed, and thanked the cosmos for that. As they stood there, watching the stars that now held both promise and peril, Zara felt a sense of anticipation unlike anything she'd ever experienced. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged stronger. They had rewritten the laws of physics and touched the face of the impossible. Now, they stood on the brink of an adventure beyond imagination. The emissary would launch in 6 months, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of an entire galaxy. And at its helm would be a human, leading a crew of diverse beings into the great unknown. For in the end, that was humanity's greatest strength, the ability to unite, to inspire, and to face the impossible with a mix of determination, creativity, and just the right amount of insanity. As the first light of a new dawn broke over Harmonix, Zora Chen smiled. The greatest adventure in the history of the galaxy was about to begin. And humanity, in all its beautiful, chaotic, insane glory, would lead the way. The end.